North Dakota State Extension economist Frayne Olson is our market analyst this week. Nationally, farmers now have 39% of the corn crop in the ground. The data from the weekly USDA Crop Progress Report also suggests that 8% of the crop has emerged. In addition, soybean planting progress is now ahead of the 5-year average at 15%. Soybean markets were not able to find help from a trade meeting between the U.S. and China, as the two countries did not report any agreements. However, corn and ethanol supporters did celebrate on Tuesday as President Donald Trump reaffirmed his support of year-round sales of E15 fuel. We talked with Frayne Tuesday afternoon about the current political pressure and began by asking him about the meeting in China.
Yeah, actually it's very important for the soybean market. China obviously is our #1 customer. And there was a trade delegation that was sent over, and understand these are some really senior people in Department of Commerce, in the chief negotiator, the trade negotiator's office. So this is a very powerful group that went over to China last week to try and at least sit down face to face with their Chinese counterparts, try and work out at least get the issues on the table and then work out some of the possible solutions to those. Unfortunately, the trade team came away a little bit disappointed. I think there was probably some higher expectations leading up to those discussions. Now understand the discussions are still going on. At least there was agreement that they would continue to talk, so that they didn't get so contentious that they actually broke down and everybody left and said there's no compromise here. So we are getting some feedback from both the administration, Trump administration in Washington, D.C., as well as the President of China and his administration, that yes, we still need to continue to work, we need to talk about this and try to come up with some resolution.
We have been seeing news reports that China has essentially stopped buying U.S. soybeans. Help us understand the historical context of that decision, particularly for this time of year.
Yeah, so one of the things you got to understand about the soybean market is we have very seasonal export patterns. So starting about the U.S. soybean harvest, we start getting a rapid increase in both export sales as well as export shipments. Those tend to drop off a little bit during the winter months. And then during the spring, about the time that the Brazilian harvest is starting, our export pace starts to drop off fairly quickly. So seasonally at this time of year, our soybean exports are very, very low, and our sales into the Chinese market at this time of year are also very low. So even though the reports are coming out that the Chinese are buying 0 U.S. soybeans right now, everything is coming from either Brazil or Argentina. Just to understand, seasonally, that's kind of a normal pattern. It is sending a signal to the marketplace that they're serious about this and that they're taking the trade negotiations again very seriously, and that this is part of the discussion. But we also have to be a little bit cautious that when we hear there's 0 exports into China at this stage of the game, seasonally at this time of year we send very little soybeans in anyway. So again, just to put things in context for everybody.
Corn and ethanol advocates have been lobbying the Trump administration heavily to expand ethanol usage. How big of an impact does ethanol policy have on the corn markets?
Well, actually a very large impact. Again, right now we have the renewable fuel standard, which sets a minimum for the amount of ethanol that needs to be blended into the U.S. fuel supply. The current numbers, we're actually exceeding those. So the current production and blending of ethanol is above what the current mandate is. But those discussions, because it's a very policy-driven discussion, are really important. And there's a couple things going on. First is the RINs, which is really the accounting system that's used by the administration and by the U.S. government to make sure that the amount of fuel or ethanol that needs to be blended is being blended. So there's some discussion about how those RINs are to be counted and kind of the pricing of those. As well as then some exemptions that are also offered to smaller refineries to try and, because of their cost structure, they don't want it to be a financial burden to be able to have to blend off all of the ethanol. So there are some exemptions that are being made right now for smaller or those that are financially stressed manufacturers or the refiners. The moral of the story is the policy is very important. We're getting some negotiations and discussions not only from the ethanol groups, but then also from our gasoline manufacturers sector. And so they're trying to come up with a compromise to say, how can we make this work for everybody? As part of that discussion, there's also some potentially movement from a 10% blend to a 15% blend. Right now there's some technical details that prevent too much 15% blend into our ethanol base. So these are all kind of a floating and maneuvering, the political maneuvering to be able to see what we can work out. It is really critical for the corn market because approximately 40% of our corn goes into the ethanol manufacturing system.
The World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates are due this week. What are the expectations for that report?
Yeah, so the unique thing about the May report is it's the first time the USDA comes out with their formal estimates for the 2018-19 crop year. And so this will be the first vision or first view that we get, not only for expected production, but also for projected usage. So they're going to update the numbers from the old crop, which is the one that's in the bin, as well as give us their first estimates for new crop. The new crop estimates will be the ones that we spend the most time in focusing on. I don't expect any big surprises from the production numbers, but I do expect that the market analysts and traders will spend a lot of time talking or looking at the consumption numbers, in particular the forecast for exports.
Up in your area of the country, spring wheat planting is underway. What is the outlook for that crop?
Yeah, spring wheat planting right now is a little bit behind in our normal pace. We had a kind of a cool late spring. We've had a few sunny days now, and the soil temperatures are rising. Midweek we were having some rain showers, which will set us back a little bit, but the moisture is sure appreciated. Right now, nobody's really panicking when it comes to planting dates and starting to switch crops, but it is a concern. If we don't get some good weather here going to be able to catch up, then the market might getting a little bit more concerned. But at this point, we're behind our normal pace, but it's not a panic yet.